In today's day and age, games are somewhat of an escape for people wanting to get away from their stress-filled lives, and at the time where that escape is needed most, they act upon their greed, pushing out poor release after poor release. Some games today feel like they were made by AI with how soulless of an interpretation they are of the most popular thing at the time, but judging by the sales of those games, I'm the odd one out. My problem with modern gaming is its tireless commitment to popularizing the most low-effort games and hailing them as the peak of the industry, while then downplaying the importance and impact of smaller games. I've heard one too many times that gaming is dry or even dying during times where what I consider are big game releases. And I would also be lying if I said I haven't heard this about this year, even though this year has been filled with multiple blockbuster games. I think people who say these things are stuck in the mindset that if a game released is not Fortnite level of popularity, that gaming year is dry. And if that's the type of game they're searching for, then they're probably going to be looking for a while, because that game is one in a million. My problem with this year is not the games released, it's the quality of the games released. Gaming has always been plagued with re-releases of older games, but this year has been a boiling point, with multiple of them being low effort afterthoughts. You would think that re-releasing a game would give the developers a great chance at breathing new life into old games for the people that never got to play the original, but guessing by the state of some of the re-releases this year, I must be wrong. I think there's something very sinister about re-releasing a game and selling it at full price, with the only changes being frame rate and an AI upscaled resolution, while then banking on the game's nostalgia to carry it. I, like many others, were a proponent of wanting a game like Persona 3 on modern platforms, but if I knew it was going to be a quick cash grab with some of the lowest effort I've seen in games in a while, I would have wanted something different. And while on the topic of re-releases, let's talk about some horrible ports developers have been forcing PC players to deal with. At the start of 2023, a game called Wild Hearts released, a Monster Hunter-like game that's sole objective was to hunt Japanese-inspired monsters. And while the trailers looked promising, the game seemed slightly off. Reviewers would then get the game and be split on what they thought of it, and why was that? Well, because the ones praising the game were playing on consoles. PCs are known for their vast variety of ports and configurations, and while good for consumers, making games for all those ports is very difficult. Wild Hearts is a victim of making a game for consoles first and PC second, a problem that many developers run into. If you commit to making a PC port of a game, then you should be making it for PC first and console second, because a console can only have one or two variations while PCs can have thousands, and optimization for all those types of hardware is the key problem here. More time should have been allotted to the developers to work on weaker hardware, but instead they continue to put all their time and focus into the most powerful hardware, creating the travesty that was Wild Hearts' PC port. Wulong Fallen Dynasty and Star Wars Jedi Survivor fall into the same basket as Wild Hearts, broken on launch and fixed later. We are currently in a time where developers care more for getting their games out the door and fixing them later than originally releasing something finished. Games live and die by their first impressions, and releasing something unfinished is not a good first impression. Times are changing and consumers are waking up to the fact that if we want to change, then we have to stop supporting the ones doing the bad, because if we don't speak up, then we stand to look like we support them. Bad ports are not my only problem with modern gaming, they're just one form of corporate greed that is plaguing the industry. Gaming over the last 10 years has gone through somewhat of a renaissance, becoming a generally accepted hobby, a gigantic leap from what it once was. And with that leap comes the negatives. Not everyone plays multiple games a year. What's most common is for people to play and spend their money on one game. Take for instance Call of Duty, a game whose player base rarely explores out of the Call of Duty franchise. And what's the problem with this, you ask? Well, when you don't spend money on anything else other than that one thing, if that one thing then rips you off, you're more willing to still buy the thing that rips you off, because you can rationalize any purchase if it's the only thing you're going to spend money on that year. All leading to the thinking that they can price their skins at $20 a piece. Now, something like Diablo is in a very different situation to Call of Duty. Diablo doesn't have a fan base like Call of Duty's, and Diablo also doesn't want you playing their game all year round. But the one thing they do want you doing is spending the same amount on skins as Call of Duty. If you don't want your player base playing your games all year round, then don't ask them to pay premium prices for in-game items knowing they're going to have to spend more money on other games. Mobile gaming has been doing this for years, but unlike Diablo, they're not full-priced games. Most of the monetization strategies and prices found in games today can be attributed to the mobile market, be that XP boosts or buyable content skips. Mobile games are designed around getting players addicted to their gameplay loops and then making them pay to help with that gameplay loop. At the end of the day, I think mobile games have predatory monetization strategies even though they're free. But what does that say about games with the same monetization yet are full priced? Monetization in games is tricky, new content costs money, and if the only time you're going to ask for money is the entry price, then I can understand the need for more investment. But the strategies you adopt can change the reception. Season passes and monthly subscriptions have fixed this problem for decades, and changing it to overpriced skins only created a new problem without fixing the old ones. As I've said, gaming is no stranger to implementing weird and rushed ideas to solve decade-long problems. And always online games are another byproduct of this thinking. Always online games were brought in to curb the rise in piracy, and it did this by making sure the person playing the game always had an online connection, so they could check if they actually owned the game. Always online is just a fancy way of saying internet required DRM, a and more often than not it's used at the detriment to the user and experience than to potential pirates. If someone wants to pirate your game, they will. So alienating people who have bad or no internet connection seems to do more harm than good to games that implement it. DRMs have been hurting PC games for a while now, and their link to loss of performance is why PC players want them gone. And let's be real, even if it doesn't hurt performance, what does adding it even do? Dissuade pirates? Are we just gonna act like all DRMs aren't broken within 3 days? DRMs are currently used as a deterrent instead of a solution. So when broken, why aren't they removed? Greed is the cause of nearly all of gaming's problems. Microtransactions, DRM, and terrible ports. They all fall under the same umbrella of greed. Game developers have always been greedy, but it is more prevalent than ever today. Coercing players into shady practices is not a sustainable way of asking for more monetary investment. People have shown over the last few years that they are willing to throw money at games they enjoy. So focusing on creating something special should be the goal, not creating systems that try to rob people that decide to pick up your game. But the problem with my fantasy world is thinking corporations care for morality. Money is their goal, so money is what they'll get. And if increasing profits means creating an even more predatory system, then so be it. The conclusion of all of this is predatory monetization systems work. They create the ideal world for companies wanting to create games for the sole purpose of monetary gain. And as far as I can see, it's working. I hate to bring it up again, but Call of Duty is a massive culprit of this. No one I know has stopped playing the games because of its monetization, and the few that speak up about it have no real impact. Solving a problem takes time and effort, but if people don't see anything wrong with the problem, then change cannot happen. And this is the standstill we find ourselves at, with the companies that are pushing this happening to have the biggest IPs creating the most money year on year, and with fan bases that see nothing wrong with what they're doing. Nothing will change until the people willing to support them change their minds, and who knows when that's going to be. So for the time being, go find something, be that a game or whatever you enjoy, that doesn't waste your time and money, because sticking by games and companies that do things you dislike only elongates the process.